Hi everyone! Today I'm going to be very bold and I'm going to be using multiple sheets of 12 by 12 pattern sheets of paper. It's not something I do frequently because I love paper and I love the pretty patterns, so I have a really hard time using a full sheet or multiple full sheets for one page. But today I wanted to make this really massive fringe heart. So I am going to be doing 3 layers, so I have 3 different pattern sheets of paper, and then I have a light green cardstock for my background. So to start off, I took out a white piece of scratch paper. It's that paper that comes in albums in the filler pockets. It's like that white sheet of paper. I don't really know what those are for. If someone can tell me in the comments below, I would appreciate that. I sometimes just leave it in there because I don't really need more white sheets of paper. But for this project, I just pulled one out from one of my albums because it just sits there. It doesn't do anything for me. At least I don't think it does anything. And I folded it in half to cut out my own heart to trace onto the different sheets of pattern paper so that all the hearts or all parts of the heart are of the same size and shape. So I had one of these sheets left over, and that's going to be a bottom because it has that nice point at the bottom. So I do have to change how I usually make my fringe hearts. This is going to be a little bit different than how I made my embellishment fringe hearts, just because of what kind of scrap pieces of paper I ended up using for this project. I do take my heart and I trace it on 2 of the big 12 by 12s, and then I take that scratch piece of pattern paper and cut off the bottom point of the heart with that one. I do trace the point of the heart onto this piece of paper, and I am just trimming it to match the rest of the other hearts that I am going to be piecing together. I made sure that my bottom point was big enough because since I'm not using that pattern sheet of paper as my base layer, I needed it to be tall enough so that I can adhere my middle section of my fringe heart right on top. And I need just enough space so that I can adhere the bottom to the middle and then still have enough room to add my fringe. I've traced my template on the back of the pattern sheet of paper, the side that I'm not exposing on the layout, because I then don't have to worry about any pencil marks and having to go back in to erase them. So that's one tip I would definitely recommend whenever you're trying to cut stuff from templates or you're tracing anything. Just use the back sides, and that would help you reduce the work of erasing any pencil marks. I also definitely want to say that when you're doing that, you want to make sure you're tracing the correct side of your sheet. Not all shapes are going to be mirror image of itself, so when you flip them over, they will be different. So make sure you trace the correct side. Now I'm marking where I want to cut the heart for my second layer. I want to make sure that it covers up the fact that I don't have a full heart for the bottom layer, and I'm just marking it based on where my bottom layer ends. And I just trim it with my paper trimmer, and then I do the same thing for the top. I have to decide how much of the top I want, and then I trim off that as well. And the pieces that I end up not using from the heart, I am going to save for probably, scraps for a future layout. So they definitely won't be going to waste. Now that I have all 3 pieces of my heart cut out, I want to make sure that they fit well together, and so far so good. I do end up going in with a pair of scissors to just trim off any excess that I end up seeing on the edges, but otherwise it worked out really well with the template. So before I even adhere the 3 pieces together, I like to cut the fringe because it just is a lot easier to cut that fringe without any layers underneath it. And I'm just taking a pair of scissors to cut approximately an inch up the pattern sheet of paper, and then they're about, I say, a quarter of an inch wide. So, but you can do whatever size you want. You can make them thinner if you want, but I just like them to be a little bit bigger so that you can see them a little bit better. After I did the fringes for all three hearts, I adhere them together and onto the green cardstock. And now for my photo. I decided to pick a photo my boyfriend and I had taken when we were in Vermont. And I also had this yellow Vermont die cut that I had left over from a previous page I didn't use, and decided I was going to use it for this page. And my photo has my chin a little bit cut off, but I don't really care. I just wanted to remember that we went hiking and we were up in the mountains of Vermont, and we had just snapped this quick photo of ourselves and the view in the background. I took the photo underneath my top layer of my heart because I wanted the fringe to show up more. I really wanted to emphasize like the details that I had on this page. And then I decided to use that Vermont die cut right up there in the top. And I didn't mind that it was covering my photo, and I definitely didn't mind that it was on top of that heart pattern sheet of paper. It showed right through the die cut, so it was still very consistent with my page. I pulled out these Dear Lizzie chipboard stickers that I really liked. I picked out the Hello Heart, and that ends up being my title for this page. So it says Hello Vermont. And then the other one says You Make My Heart Smile. And I also pulled out this Hooray because I'm not much of a hiker, and I was thinking it'd be a great sentiment to show the celebration of me actually surviving all the way up the mountain. Though I have to disclose that my boyfriend did drive us halfway there, and then we hiked for probably another half hour to 45 minutes to get to the top. I am now going through the embellishments to pick out other things that would go well on this page. Because my heart was so big, I didn't want to oversaturate it with other big pieces of embellishment. So I'm still sticking to things that are small just so that we can sprinkle a little bit of color onto the back green cardstock. So I ended up picking these brads from Studio Calico. Who uses brads nowadays? I don't see them around very much anymore, but I really like them. They're kind of like enamel dots, but more colorful and more designs. So for me, I missed using these, and when I actually used them on this page, it was so satisfying because I actually used up the rest of this pack that I have in my hand. I put 3 brads in each of the embellishment areas I was trying to decorate, and it flows really nicely from the lower right all the way up to the upper left-hand corner of the page. To help with inserting my brads, I do pull out my paper piercer to poke the holes of where I want the brads to go. I have seen people cut off that tail of the brad and just adhere it right onto the page. You can probably use like hot glue gun or something. But I still like, putting the brad through and then splitting the tail in the back. But I'm going to skip over the whole fiasco of putting these brads in because it does take me quite a while to do it. Now, onto my journaling. I decided that I was going to journal, but I was going to journal on that middle section of the heart. It's not very legible for the camera, but it's legible enough that if someone saw my page, they could read it if they want. But I also didn't want it to be very obvious, so it's perfect where I decided to put it. And I wrote that we went for a short hike up Okemo. Supposedly, it is really pretty up there. Ted drove part of the way, and we hiked the rest. This was proof that we actually did it. I dated my page, and I thought I was done after this, but then I realized I had these cut apart sheets from the cut apart paper I wanted to use instead. This sentiment that says, "Oh darling, let's be adventurers," was a great add-on to the page. So I removed my hooray and decided to cut around this circle sentiment and add it to the page on the bottom right. Then I saw another sentiment I thought that worked well with the page, which was summer to-do list from this journaling part of this cut apart sheet. I didn't care for all that journaling space, so I just cut off the top portion of it and put that right above where I did my journaling. I probably should have stopped here and called it a day, but I saw another one that I really liked. It was the one that said sunshine equals happiness, and I wanted to add that to the page as well. So I fussy cut that portion out because it looks like it's a long paint splatter with some white cursive on top, and I decided to add that right underneath our photo. And since my face was already cut off, I layered it right on top. And that's my page. I hope you enjoyed this giant fringe heart layout. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them below, and I hope you have a crafty day.